ॐ तव कथामृतं तप्तजीवनं कविभिरीडितं कल्मषापहं श्रवणमङ्गलं श्रीमदादतं भुवि गृह्णन्ति ये भूरिदा जनाः. Sri Sri Ramakrishna Kathamrita, the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, recorded by Sri Mahendranath Gupta, who styled himself as M. It's originally in Bengali, and we are reading out the original Bengali version, Sri Bhagavan Vacha, as they say in the Gita, as told by Sri Bhagavan Ramakrishna, and then we will try to translate into simple English and explain the meaning of the words of Sri Ramakrishna as far as we can understand it. The four occasions in the second meeting of M with Sri Ramakrishna, on which M's ego was completely crushed. One was when he asked M whether he was married and had children, and when the answer was in the affirmative, he immediately reacted in such a way that M felt very awkward and guilty. The meaning of this is perhaps that Sri Ramakrishna wanted to impress upon M that wives, children, the family, all of them actually belong to God. They should be taken as gifts from God, and one should not think of oneself as the Karta or the person who is the head of the family. The Karta, the head of the family, is God Himself. So the moment he reacted in a funny fashion according to M immediately felt a blow on his ego. So we should carefully notice how M is reacting to the words of Sri Ramakrishna, being a very, very highly elevated soul and a Parshada, companion of Sri Ramakrishna. He could immediately take those words into his heart and engineer a deeper consciousness transformation. Immediately he felt his ego was collapsing. The most vital aspect of spiritual life, the sadhana by which we can easily intuit the divine, realize God, as we say, is the collapsing of the ego. The ego is a very spurious entity, a ghost which exists at the same time doesn't exist. How does it come into existence is very funny. Vedanta says that when Chit and Jada come together, the consciousness principle and the unconsciousness, Chetana Vastu and the Jada Vastu, Atman and Anatman, they come together. There is a Chit Jada Granthi. Granthi means a knot. When these two come together in the form of a knot, this knot manifests as the ego, the sense of I. I am a jiva. I am an individual. In matter of fact, all of us are universal. We are not individuals at all. The individuation of consciousness as the ego, the jiva consciousness. This is the emergence of the ego, the I, which is the root of all mischief. And this ego later on, being unable to survive on its own without hanging on to, hooking on to certain supports, creates further limitations, which are called technically in Sanskrit, in Vedanta, as upadhis. The jiva, who actually is the infinite consciousness, individuates himself or herself as a small, limited entity, and having done that, the jiva takes on a name and a form, identifies himself or herself with the body, with the mind, with the intellect, with the various emotions, and so on. At every point, this identification, which is called adhyasa in Sanskrit, is responsible for the play of the Jagat. The entire drama which we are witnessing in the world is the interplay between the jiva and the Jagat. Jiva, having assumed that he is an individual limited entity, identifying himself serially with the Annamaya, Pranamaya, Manomaya, Vijnanamaya, Anandamaya koshas, the mind, the body, the senses, the intellect, and the ahankara, plays about in the world as a person. This is Vedanta. But the happening is so subtle that we do not even know that such a nadhyasa has taken place, identification has taken place. In order to point out to M that you are not that limited entity, in the language of bhakti, you are a child of God, and the wife and children that you have are gifts from God, and therefore do not imagine that you are the head of the family, and do not allow the ego to hook on to the wife and children as my children and my wife and so on. So the ego, I, hanging on or hooking on to wife and children through relationship as mine, gets a jolt. The second occasion is when Sri Ramakrishna asks M, what kind of wife do you have? Is she Vidyashakti or Avidyashakti? M couldn't quite understand the words Vidyashakti and Avidyashakti, which mean, respectively, according to Sri Ramakrishna, a partner, wife, who helps the husband in the spiritual path, and a partner or a wife who, demanding sensual pleasures, distracts the husband from the spiritual path. M couldn't understand the nuances of Vidyashakti and Avidyashakti, but says, Agya bhalo kintu agyan. Well, she is good, but ignorant. Immediately, Sri Ramakrishna bangs him, gives a tight slap in his ego, and says, Ar tumi jnani, and you are a man of knowledge. M's ego got a second jolt, which he records himself, because he uses the word ignorant with regard to his wife, because the wife hadn't gone to school education, college or university education. His wife hasn't read many books, and therefore she is ignorant. He himself confesses that he did not know at that time the meaning of knowledge and ignorance. He thought that knowledge is obtained through reading many books, and not reading many books is ignorance. Later, he says, he came to know that knowledge of God alone is knowledge, and knowledge of anything else apart from God is ignorance. This is called in the Upanishad as Paravidya and Aparavidya. The Mundaka Upanishad has a story of Shaunaka, a great householder, approaching a sage, a rishi, Angiras, and asking a question. What is it by knowing which everything can be known? Then the rishi answers, two kinds of knowledge have to be mastered. One is called the Paravidya, other is called the Aparavidya. All the sciences and arts and literature, everything that you study in the relative world is Aparavidya, lower knowledge. And that knowledge by which you intuit the supreme imperishable Brahman is Paravidya. Shaunako havai mahashalo angirasam vidivadupasannah papracha kasminnu bhagavo vigyate sarvamidam vigyatam bhavatiti tasmai sahovacha dve vidye veditavye parachaiva paracha tatra para rigvedo yajurvedo samavedo atharvavedah शिक्षा कल्पो व्याकरणं निरुक्तं छंदो ज्योतिषमिति अथ परायया तद अक्षरमधिगम्यते. The beauty of the Vedas, as Swamiji said, is that the Vedas themselves say the study of the Vedas is only secondary. Rig Veda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, Atharvaveda, the four principal Vedas, Shiksha, Kalpa, Vyakarana, Nrukta, Chanda, Jyotish, the 6 Vedangas, all of them are only Aparavidya, lower knowledge, because they can't lead you to the highest Brahman. That knowledge which leads you to the highest imperishable Brahman is the Paravidya. This was the highest teaching which Ramakrishna gave him just in 3 words, in the form of a tight slap on his cheek, as it were, crushing his ego, Ar tumi jnani, and you are a man of knowledge. Second time on, M's ego got crushed. Then Sri Ramakrishna asks him, do you believe in God with form or believe in God without form? M's ego got a jolt, he writes, because nothing was found in the books which he has studied that God can have both form and be formless. How can a substance have form and formlessness as attributes together? How can a white liquid like milk be black at the same time? His ego got a jolt because his logical mind began to collapse. This is an important event to note and a lesson to learn. Unless the logical mind collapses and you transcend the logic, the higher truths can't be intuited. The higher truths are beyond logic, but they are not illogical. they are not logical either in the sense that we ordinarily know. So we may call them illogical, supralogical. Human beings pride themselves as rational, logical, reasoning, and therefore the ego sticks on to the reason. Ego survives in the case of so-called intellectuals, educated, rational, scientifically minded and oriented people who are actually stupid in the sense in which they have not known the highest truth. The ego survives in them by hooking on to their intellect and their logic. M's ego started getting crushed again because his logical mind couldn't quite understand how formlessness of God and a form of God can coexist at the same time. He hesitantly tells Ramakrishna, well, I would like to think of him as formless. Sri Ramakrishna immediately reacts, well, that is good, but do not imagine that he cannot have a form. Sri Ramakrishna often used to say, he is with form, he is without form, he is beyond form and formlessness, and how many more things besides. Tini Shakar, Tini Nirakar, Shakar Nirakar er pare, Aro koto ki. Then, when he learns from Ramakrishna that God can be with form and without form, and there is no limit to God's infinite attributes. The infinitude of God cannot be limited. This is one of the most fundamental doctrines of Sri Ramakrishna, which is found at the very beginning of the Gospel of Ramakrishna, as being told to M, if we carefully read between the lines. Then he begins to argue because his ego is not fully crushed. Then he says, Agya tini shakari vishwas jano holo, kintu matir pratima tini to non. Sir, well, you may believe that God is a form, but certainly he is not the clay image which the devotees worship. Sri Ramakrishna cuts him sharp and says, Mati kanago chinmoyi pratima. Why should it be the image of clay? It's the image of spirit. It is the image of consciousness. Chid ghana kaya. Once again, M couldn't understand what is the meaning of chinmoyi pratima. And from the logical point of view, from a natural point of view, according to him, he begins his argument. This tarka, argument, is something that the logical mind can never overcome. And the supreme truth, divinity or God, can never be realized through reason. Sri Ramakrishna often used to say, and the very famous song which I was fond of, Amai dema pagol kore brahmamoyi, dema pagol kore brahmamoyi, dema pagol kore. Ar kaj nai ma gyan vichare, dema pagol kore brahmamoyi. Ar kaj nai ma gyan vichare. Mother, make me mad with thy divine love. which unites, which unifies, and not give me this reason, logic chopping, which actually divides and not unites. What do I have to do with the logic and reason? Rabindranath Tagore, one of the greatest poets of all time, once wrote a small sentence. There's a small book, Stray Birds. The original Bengali is called Konika, small pieces, simple sentences or words, which the poet has jotted down with profound meaning. He says there in English, a mind which is all logic is like a sword which has no blade. It makes the hand bleed that handles it. If you have a very sharp sword or a blade, and there's no handle where you can hold it, which is blunt, then your hand will bleed. So too much of logic chopping and too much of reasoning makes you and others bleed. Come on, endlessly arguing. This is what M wanted to do in the beginning, and through the forced nubbings which he got, his ego got fully crushed and he never argued again. This is a lesson for all of us to learn. Don't endlessly go on arguing about divine principles. The worldly arguments themselves have no end. If arguments, reasoning can have a conclusion, then there will be no courts. A lower court gives a verdict, you appeal to the higher court, that overturns this verdict. Once again he goes to the division bench, that changes that verdict. Once again approaches still higher court, the Supreme Court, that completely changes that verdict. Now my question is, aren't all the judges wise men, deeply learned? Why is it that the judgment of a particular court is revised, changed, and even completely overturned by the higher judge? Because it's a question of interpretation, how you look at it. A particular issue can be looked at from ever so many angles. There is no conclusive statement about anything. This kind of philosophical idea is called Anekantavada in Jainism. Jain philosophy is one of the richest. The Anekantavada says, truth can be looked at, viewed, perceived, understood from innumerable angles of vision. You cannot conclusively say that is this and not that. This is exactly what Sri Ramakrishna said. Don't put a limitation on God. Ishvarar iti korona. Iti means full stop. God is this. God is with form, period, full stop. Nothing else. God is without form. He is formless, full stop, period. Nothing else. Don't say that. You do not exactly know what the divine principle is. It is infinitely variant, can be viewed from ever so many angles and understood. What it actually, in fact, is unknown, but is knowable by becoming it. This is an important truth of Vedanta once again. Vedanta says there are two kinds of knowledge. One is the lower knowledge, aparavidya, by which you know what you want to know by studying it as an object. I am the subject. And the object which I am studying is the object. And the subject which is me and the object which is being studied are two independent things. And between the object and the subject, the knowable or the known and the knower, the Gyeya and the Gyata, there is a process of knowing, Jnanam. This is called Triputi in Vedanta. Every process of knowledge passes through this triad, Triputi. Gyata, Gyeya, Jnana. Knower, known, and knowledge. Drashta, Drishya, and Darshana. The seer, the seen, and the act of seeing. Shrota, Shruta, Shravana. The hearer or the listener, the thing which is being listened to, and the act of listening, and so on. So every piece of knowledge that we gain in the external world is acquired by this process of Triputi triad. In the case of the Supreme Being, which is our own self, you can't realize as an object. I am the subject, separate from God, and I study Him, know Him as an object. So if you say that God is an object of my understanding and study, and I as a jiva am trying to understand it, then your knowledge of God will be completely limited by your understanding. How do you actually know what God Himself is, the truth is? You can know the truth by becoming the truth. Sri Ramakrishna used to give a simple example in the Kathamrita, in the Gospel. Nuner putul samudram apte gichilo. A salt doll went to measure the depth of the ocean. Everybody is laughing in Kathamrita, Shokalir Harsha. Obviously, you know what happens. The salt doll completely dissolves in the ocean. Now, did the salt doll know the ocean? Understand the ocean? Study the ocean? The answer is yes and no. Yes, because it became the ocean, and therefore, who else could know the ocean more completely than the salt doll, which itself became the ocean? No, because it did not study or understand the ocean as an object. So the two kinds of knowing, just now we said, Paravidya and Aparavidya. What M says, knowledge is not obtained from the books. That is the divine knowledge which you intuit, understand it in the depths of your being as your own self. Two kinds of knowledge. One is knowing something as an object. The other is knowing something by becoming it as one with one's own self. Knowing by becoming and knowing as an object. This is an important difference we should remember. Never put a limitation on God's infinity. Sri Ramakrishna always used to say this. And he used to quote a story, cite a story which again occurs in the Jaina philosophy. Several blind people trying to know the elephant. It's a well-known story. some blind people went and wanted to find out the nature of the elephant. One of them touched the trunk of the elephant and claimed that it was like a huge pillar. Another blind man was touching the ear of the elephant and said, "Oh, elephant is like a fan." The third person touched the legs of the elephant and said, "It's a huge pillar." The trunk was actually a pipe, and another person was touching the tail and said, "Oh, it's like a brush." A huge quarrel ensued till a person with eyes, a wise man, came along and said, "Why are you people quarreling?" "Sir, I say that the elephant is like a pipe, but he says, no, it's like a fan." "Oh, you are right." "What did you say? It's like a fan?" "Ah, you are also right." "What did you say? It's like a pillar?" "You are right." "What did you say? It's like a brush?" "Oh, you are right." How can everybody be right at the same time? Because everybody is right, but not fully right. Partially right, because they had only partial perception of the reality, of the truth. So don't quarrel about God, about the infinity, because any perception that you can have of God can only be partial. If you want to know the whole of God, you have to become it, like the salted oil getting dissolved in the ocean. Then there is no knower, known, and the act of knowing, jnata, jnaya, and jnana, the Triputi, and therefore you simply have to be silent. Upashantoyam atma. The Upanishad says ultimately the Atman is upashanti, complete silence. This is why Buddha did not describe the truth in any way. Does God exist? He kept quiet. "Oh, you mean to say God does not exist?" He kept quiet. Silence means that you can't really say anything about the nature of God. So in the depths of being you realize it. This is exactly what Sri Ramakrishna says here. Don't keep on arguing what you have studied from books. How can you know the real nature of God? So Chinmayi Pratima is the image of consciousness. M couldn't quite understand it. Once again, he begins to argue because his ego was not fully crushed. He says, even then, those who worship the clay image should be made to know, understand that the image they are worshipping is not God, but keeping the image in front, they are worshipping the infinite supreme being. Then Sri Ramakrishna lashes at him and says, this is one problem with the Calcutta people, meaning all people who are claimed to be educated like us, want to give lectures to others and make others understand. You first understand that the Antaryamin, the indwelling regulator and controller, the supreme being who is in the heart of your hearts, who has created the sun and the moon and the stars and the various planets, created the human beings and animals and insects, created parents, given love in their hearts to take care of their children. He will make them understand. Who are you to make your others understand? First, you gain knowledge, you gain bhakti, you become humble. This lesson in humility is what the world needs greatly now. Man is becoming proud with authority, with knowledge. Knowledge is killing us. What is the use of this knowledge? All the knowledge of humans has not been able to find out the nature of the tiniest of the tiniest of the tiny virus called the corona, COVID-19. What is the nature? By the time you find out a vaccine, after 1.5 years of struggle, the COVID has the last laugh and the mutation takes place. A new variant has come in and the vaccine is useless. Who is more intelligent, the virus or a human being? Who created this virus? How did it come about? It's a lifeless entity, the tiniest of the tiny. And when it catches up with something living, it becomes violent, virulent. Infection spreading, multiplying, mutating. Human beings are flabbergasted, confused, terrified. The whole humanity is now crying, unable to know the nature of the smallest of the small virus. And human being proud and says, I have understood the nature of the truth, nature of reality, endlessly argue, write books, quarrel. How stupid humans can be. As the poet said, what fools these mortals be. Man, proud man, dressed with a little brief authority, most ignorant of what he is most sure of, his glassy essence, like an angry ape, makes such fantastic gestures before the high heavens that makes the angels weep. Shakespeare, Measure for Measure. Dressed in a little brief authority. I know, I have found out, I am a scientist. I am working in a great laboratory. I have discovered, I have got awards. And the challenge of the virus, human beings are now shaking in their shoes now. The whole humanity is weeping and crying, flabbergasted, confused. Let us be humble and pray, how little do I know, O Lord? You reveal yourself to me. This is Ramakrishna's burden of the song in this Gospel of Ramakrishna. With tears in your eyes, with great humility, going down on your knees and pray to God, oh God, I do not know who you are, what is your real nature, nor can my little brain intellect understand you. You please make me understand. That's what he says here. You, ignorant man, want to make others understand, thinking that they are ignorant. That Antaryami within, the indwelling controller and regulator, he will make you understand. What a beautiful statement. Every one of the species on this earth is endowed with love in the heart. The parents who give birth to this offspring, how carefully, lovingly, affectionately they take care. Whether it be a human being, whether it's a bird or an animal or an insect, how carefully, how affectionately, how lovingly these beings take care of the offsprings, their children. Jesus the Christ said in the Bible, which one of you, if your child comes and asks for a piece of flesh to eat, give him a serpent? If your child comes and asks for a piece of bread, will you give him a stone? You being so cruel, are so affectionate and loving to your children, how much more will the Heavenly Father will be to His children? Think of this. What compassion the Lord must be having to provide all that we need. And human beings being greedy, jealous, selfish, quarrel endlessly, argue, and rigidly and fanatically think that I have understood the truth and nobody else. Ramakrishna wants to crush this fanaticism, bigotry, that I know, nobody else knows. I have understood. How little you have understood. That's what he says here. মা বাপের স্নেহ করেছেন তিনি বুঝাবেন, জীব জন্তুদের খাওয়ার উপায় পালন করবার জন্য মা বাপ করেছেন, মা বাপের স্নেহ করেছেন তিনি বুঝাবেন. He has produced so many species and given love in the hearts of the parents to take care of them. যদি বুঝাবার দরকার হয় তিনি বুঝাবেন. তিনি তো অন্তর্যামী. If it is necessary for that worshipper to know, then the Antaryami will make him understand. Now you don't have to worry about it. যদি ওই মাটির প্রতিমা পূজা করাতে কিছু ভুল হয়ে থাকে তিনি কি জানেন না তাকেই ডাকা হচ্ছে? If there is anything wrong with the worshipper thinking that the clay image is God and worshipping, if there is anything wrong at all, he will make him understand. You don't have to worry about it. Does he not know he himself is being invoked through that? তিনি ওই পূজাতেই সন্তুষ্ট হন. তোমার ওর জন্য মাথা ব্যথা কেন? তুমি নিজের যাতে জ্ঞান হয়, ভক্তি হয়, তার চেষ্টা করো. He becomes pleased with that puja itself because he knows that he himself is being called through that. Why? Like a child, for example, goes to the mother or the father, he is unable to call him and he simply blurts out Baba, not able to say Ma or Baba or Papa. Then the father of course knows that the child is calling him and with great affection takes him on his lap. So the quality of love, which is the hearts of everybody, Brahma hoite kitu paramano sarvabhute sei premamoy. Swami Vivekananda writes in a poem, starting from Brahma, the Supreme God, up to an insect or a worm, all of them are filled with love. God has filled them with affection, with love, to take care of their children. So he will make the worshipper understand, provided the worshipper is sincere. So you don't have to worry about it. You first worry about yourself, how to acquire love of God, how to acquire jnana and bhakti. এইবার তাহার অহংকার বোধহয় একেবারে চূর্ণ হইল. M records, perhaps, hoito, he says, bodhai, perhaps his egoism got completely crushed this fourth time. Then he says, জানি না শুনি না পরকে বোঝাতে যাওয়া বড় লজ্জার কথা, হীন বুদ্ধির কাজ. I myself have not understood anything and I want to make others understand. It's shameful. এ কি অঙ্কশাস্ত্র না ইতিহাস সাহিত্য যে পরকে বোঝাবো? এই যে ঈশ্বর তত্ত্ব, ইনি যা বলছেন মনে বেশ লাগছে. This is a very important statement. This science of God, divine knowledge, is not like physics or chemistry or mathematics or history of literature, which can be imparted to somebody else. Aparavidya. This is the divine knowledge, Ishvara Tattva. He says what he says appeals to me. And a remarkable sentence here in the Gospel, please make a note of this. Remember, all of us should remind ourselves constantly of this sentence. ঠাকুরের সহিত তাহার এই প্রথম ও শেষ তর্ক. This was M's first argument with Sri Ramakrishna, the master, and happily he is lost. The entire Gospel of 1000 pages, you can see he never entered into any kind of argument with Sri Ramakrishna or anybody. Once you have understood the futility of argument, futility of constantly reasoning out and shouting and quarreling, and advancing various kinds of logic, absolutely futile. At the end of the day, your head becomes heated, you get into scuffle with everybody, and come back dejected, unhappy, and fully de-energized. Tarka, argument, reasoning never leads you to the truth. In the case of mathematics and physics, it may. But in the case of Ishvara Tattva, divine knowledge, it can't. Even in the case of ordinary knowledge like mathematics and physics, different kinds of scientists and mathematicians have advanced various kinds of logical reasoning. Which one will you take it to be true? Because they look at the truth from various angles. Somebody comes along and proves something, and after a few years, that is overturned, a new theory comes up. And after a decade or so, that theory goes and something else comes up. About the nature of muon, a small particle, a subatomic particle, experiments have been recently performed which completely go against the theory. Now the scientists are deeply worried about whether the theory has to be modified or the experiment itself is correct or no. So you keep on. You make a model, you make a theory, and the theory is modified, changed according to new facts which come in. Remember that all that the human mind can conceive is only modeling or theorizing. We do not know the truth. We create a model of the truth. That model stands for some time and is replaced by some other model. A simple example from physics I give you. What does the nucleus look like? Nucleus is the core of an atom which is positively charged. All the positive charge in the atom is concentrated in the nucleus. Now the question arose, what is the nature of this nucleus? How do you know? You create a model. Have you seen liquid drop? Drop by drop by drop when you open the tap? Then a scientist thought it could be like a liquid drop. Liquid drop model of the nucleus. So you work out the theory, you calculate and all that, and that beautifully explains nuclear fission and nuclear fusion. Fission is the breaking up into two small fragments of a very heavy nucleus, meaning a nucleus with a large number of protons and neutrons. And fusion is the coming together, fusing of the lightest of the nuclei, the hydrogen nuclei, to form a helium nucleus. Fission and fusion, these two reactions are easily explained through the liquid drop model. So everybody was happy. Then came another discovery called the magic numbers in nucleus. There are certain specific numbers called the magic numbers which are related to the nucleus. And they found the nuclear liquid drop model does not work to explain this. So they brought out another theory called the shell model of the nucleus. Just like in the case of atoms, you have shells, nucleus also should have a shell model. Now, which of these models is true? We don't know. Because one model explains a particular phenomenon in the nucleus, another model explains another set of phenomena. So scientists thought, let us have a unified model. See how the human mind is progressing towards unification and oneness. This was what Vedanta said. Don't quarrel over individual theories and models. Have a complete unified model. Kasmin bhagavo vigyate sarvamitam vigyatam bhavati. What is that knowing which everything can be known? The unified model. So we keep on moving, one model after the other. If a model completely fails to explain the experimental facts, scientists have no qualms about discarding this model. They have no attachment to any model. As they say funnily, the corridor of science is littered with the skeletons of discarded theories. You go on, moving, but never stop your inquiry. And never say that I have come to the end of my inquiry, I have understood the truth. Nobody can understand the truth unless he becomes the truth. If he becomes the truth, there will be no person or the I or a jiva who will come and say, I have understood. Like the salt doll getting merged in the ocean. This is a repeated assertion of Sri Ramakrishna, which will go on repeating when we go through this Ramakrishna Kathamrita. Sri Ramakrishna, তুমি মাটির প্রতিমা পূজা বলেছিলে, যদি মাটিরই হয় সেই পূজাতে প্রয়োজন আছে। নানা রকম পূজা ঈশ্বরই আয়োজন করেছেন। যার জগৎ তিনি এসব করেছেন। অধিকারী ভেদে যার যা পেটে সয়, মা সেই রূপ খাবার বন্দোবস্ত করেন। This is another important truth. Jata mat, tata path. As many faiths, so many paths. Sri Ramakrishna says in the Gospel, Tini ananta, patha ananta. He is infinite, and the paths leading to him are also infinite. Even assuming that worship of the clay image is attended with some defect, according to you, it has a utility. Because God has created a provision for every person to come to Him. Innumerable paths have been created so that every person, intelligent, ignorant, good, bad, wicked, man, woman, child, every person has a path by which he can come to God. And whatever path you may follow it sincerely, seriously, and without any hypocrisy, with utmost sincerity and childlike innocence. Then God walks through that path towards you and meets you in your own path. This is the promise given by Sri Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, which is quoted by Swami Vivekananda in the famous Chicago address on the 11th of September 1893. The Gita shloka says, Ye yatha mam prapadyante tas tathaiva bhajamyaham mama vartmana vartante manushya partha sarvashaha. Ye yatha mam pravartante. Whosoever wants to reach me in whatsoever path, I reach him in that path. Because all the beings are walking in the path of God. This is a very, very liberal doctrine. Because it's very logical also, irreasonable if you want logic. If God is omnipresent and omnipotent and omniscient, which are the three qualities which every religion swears by in regard to God, can He not make Himself everything to everybody? Suppose I am a fool and you are intelligent. You laugh at me because I am worshipping a snake, worshipping a tree, worshipping a clay image, worshipping a metal stone, calling it a Shiva or Ganesha or Shivalinga, and you derisively say, "Oh, you Hindus, idolaters," as if all of you are divine angels. All of us are stupid. Human beings are stupid. Stupid means limited intelligence. Don't claim omniscience. God alone can. Even assuming I'm worshipping a small stone, a symbol of Shiva or Vishnu, Salagrama, and pouring my heart's devotion, feeding that stone and then bathing that stone and drinking that Charanamrita, the water, bathed water, and I feel greatly satisfied. Oh, I have worshipped God. And you come and see my worship and derisively smile at me, then God says, if He invokes me in that stone, I have no problem in getting into that stone and accepting His worship. Because I am all-pervading, omnipresent, all-powerful, omnipotent, and all-knowing, omniscient. I know the sincerity of this worshipper, so I get into that stone and happily accept his worship. Do you have a problem in that? The so-called intellectual is being asked by God, you intellectual, you rational fellow, you derisively smile at this man worshipping the stone, but I am the Antaryami, I am the all-pervading and infinitely powerful God. I can enter into that stone and accept His worship. If you say that is not logical, God does not exist in that stone, then you are questioning the omnipotence of God, the omniscience of God, the omnipresence of God, which is just not acceptable. If God is omnipotent, He can do anything just by will. What prevents Him from entering into that stone and accepting my worship? That's what He does. So God has no problem, but you have a problem. Human beings have a problem. So-called rational, intellectual idiots like us, we have a problem. Look at our idiocy, look at our foolishness. That's what Ramakrishna says. And you think you are a great man of knowledge. God says, I have no problem. If a little child calls on the father without being able to call him fully, ba, ba, the child knows the father knows he is being called and rushes to the child and takes it in the lap. And you sitting at a distance and then derisively smile at the child, you can't pronounce one word properly. The father smiles and says, he doesn't need to pronounce, I understand. Sometimes when children cry, the mother understands instinctively, reflects, tells her why the child is crying. Sometimes the child is ill, even without anybody expressing it, the mother feels so uneasy. That's the feeling, that's the heart. Let the heart flow. Let feelings take the upper hand and kill this Rakshasa, the demon of reasoning, logic, constantly finding fault with others. You look at that man worshipping the stone with great devotion, and God accepting that from that stone, and bow down your head in reverence, and with tears you say, oh God, how compassionate are you? You are accepting this. I can't worship Him in any other way. I'm a stupid fellow. So I tell God, I can worship You only in this way. Is that all right for you? God says, no, perfectly. Only I need your love, sincerity, and deep longing to come to me. This is the essence, the crux of what Sri Ramakrishna repeatedly says in the Gospel. May he give us this understanding. Om Niranjanam Nityamanantarupam Bhaktanukampathita Vigraham Vai Ishavataram Parameshamidyam Tam Ramakrishnam Shirasa Namamaha. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.